Hello there. www.andrewmarkmusic.com. It's a late night in the van, and the mind is kind of wandering in the direction of Valentinus, of Alexandria, so Valentinian Gnosticism, and I'm going to give some thoughts on that and why I don't subscribe to it. I might as well start with the end here and say, if I was going to pick an alternative view to my Sethian Gnostic, modern Sethian Gnostic viewpoints, it would be, as a second choice of metaphysics, it would be the idea that we are God dreaming, and the goal here would be for us to wake up from the dream and realize what we truly are. So I think there's a coherency to that very well could be. It's not my belief, but it's a close second. If my Sethian Gnostic musings end up being untrue in the end, then maybe that one would be, and I can certainly live with that. Now, to preface this video on Valentinus, I have to talk about Trouble today, and Trouble is one of the cats here, and I watched her in real time, kill a mouse, and it's not something that just happens like that. These cats actually play with their prey, and for quite some time, like up to a half an hour, they'll just play with this mouse and slowly kill it. It's interesting that cats and the gods have such a close link. So certainly from a Sethian Gnostic view, that's a very interesting association. Given, and this is just a domestic house cat or barn cat, take that up a few notches once you get into like real wildlife, like lions, etc. So okay, that's a bit of a preface here. Valentinus, in my view, likely a Hebrew Jewish misinformation agent, putting together things for very specific reasons that can't be put together, to misdirect away from what is possibly true about this whole bloody mess. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to say is that he was very patriarchal in his cosmology. So in the Valentinian system, it was Jesus who created the demiurge. And again, it's very patriarchal, male-dominated system all the way through it. Now, there are things that, generally speaking, as a Christian Gnostic, there are things that I agree with that are in Valentinianism. Ideas, they're conceptual ideas in general that I agree with about the AEONS and the planetary archons and things like that. The three types of humans, the Hylics, the psychics, and the spiritualists. I always have trouble saying that word, pneumatics. So yeah, with that out of the way, it's not a complete refutation. I'm zoning in on very specific points. So the Christian Gnostic view that I hold is the monad father brought into existence the mother, and everything that is created comes from the mother. this is, to me, including the sun, this is to me is far more coherent. It makes much more sense than this completely patriarchal, male-dominated cosmology. So first and foremost, there's that. I think that the Hebrews in Alexandria were very, dominant. They had probably way more sway than what history will generally acknowledge today. So I think that to the extent that there were still Egyptians who could think for themselves, they understood that when the rabbis were going on about someone like King David, they understood immediately that story was really about Tutmosis III, the warrior king, where there's just ample evidence of his existence, and none from our modern perspective today, and none for a Hebrew King David as written in the Torah. And they understood that, in my opinion, they understood, the ones in the know in Egypt at that time, they understood that the likely candidate for the Moses story they were hearing about was Akhenaten. Okay, so this is a core reason, in my view, for why Valentinus, why it got traction, and not what I'm saying. Then there's that little problem of Set that these people would have understood. They would have understood that when they were hearing the rabbis go on and on and on about these incredible narratives, these people were skeptics. They were going, what? They understood that the Hebrews in Egypt adopted Set, similar to, as an idea, similar to the Memphis school adopting Ptah as the demiurge, chief god of that cosmogony. So they understood at that time that there was something up with the rabbis and their storytelling. It wasn't jiving. It didn't make sense to them. It was downright incongruent to them. So they basically had an understanding of where these stories were coming from. And when they heard about the Jesus character, they immediately understood Serapis, which was, I'm not going to get too much into that today, but Serapis was sort of you could call it a syncretic cult, synchronism of Egyptian deities with Greco-Roman deities that was prevalent at the time. And when they were hearing the stories coming out of Jerusalem by travelers coming into Alexandria through the centuries, it was, to them, they couldn't mistake it for anything other than Serapis. So these people didn't believe what the Jewish Christians coming in over the centuries after 33 AD, they would have had their reference point for understanding what was really going on there. Now, one of the main problems here is, and I'll go back to my cat thing here, is the Valentinian system wants to put that type of behavior in modern studies. It's called the problem of animal suffering, and they want to say, oh well, it's Sophia. But this is from a Sethian Christian Gnostic view. This is blasphemy. Like, to say that the Aeon Sophia is responsible for this carnage over the millennia is just, it's unbearable to hear. But this is what they did. This is, and there are quite a few Gnostic schools who do put this on the AEONS, and so yeah, I definitely hold a very clear dualist view between the material construct and that of what's called the canoma and that of the pleroma. So this is stream of consciousness here. I'm trying to pick out things that I was thinking. No notes. So yeah, there's very, very unlikely that, to me, it's very unpalatable when people like the Valentinians say, oh, this is Sophia who's responsible for this carnage that's built into the system. Yeah. No. Now, the other aspect here is the planetary AEONs and their role. It's really confused in the Valentinian system. Like, if Jesus is a representative of the demiurge, in the way that the Valentinians say, and certainly from the perspective of 2,000 years later, something's not jiving, right? Okay, so if they're best buds, like the Valentinians say, like Yahweh and Jesus are best buds, right? They're not doing a very good job. In fact, I'd pull a Trump here and say you're fired, because, like, let's take one example here. Like, maybe 200. I'm being facetious here, but maybe 200 Jewish people in the last 2,000 years will buy this narrative about Jesus and Yahweh being best buds, right? Let's put aside the very, very modern, likely CIA Mossad operation of what's called Jewish Christianity today. That's just a farce. But put that one aside and look at the history of the last 2,000 years within this very specific context of the Valentinian system that says that Jesus made peace with the demiurge, or the demiurge made peace with Jesus, and they're working together, right? Presumably, this means that, Jesus has an endorsing the Torah, right? Which, again, go back to what I just said about, what these Egyptians thought of that, and you got a real problem, with this. And then, again, you have the problem of these gods have not been able to convince the Jewish people that Jesus and Yahweh are best buds and have been working together. Like massive failure when nobody within the Hebrew community believes this, right? So yeah, it's actually a joke, right? It's laughable. So again, it's not a very good tell for the Valentinians. And I mean, then there's what comes along with this is just accepting the Torah and everything it says as just carte blanche, just a priori. It's just a given. No. I mean, it's quite clear that they want power. and they want authority, and they want control, and they want domination of the earth and the people. And it's questionable whether they even want the other people, commonly known as Gentiles. Now, there are schools within Judaism that just say they want us gone, like gone, 100%, right? But of course, there's the Noahide ones where you go, okay, if you bend the knee to us, you're good, you're fine. Just bend the knee to us, notwithstanding that there's no evidence for Noah, right? It's not even in the Torah, the 7 Noahide laws. It's all made up. It's just, the story of Noah is taken from the Epic of Gilgamesh, most likely. It's the most likely source. But according to them, it's just gospel and so then, again, from the perspective of Valentinianism, really, that this was there no critical? Did Valentinus not have any critical thinking about what the Torah says? Yeah, not so. Again, it's not an attack on the people who do believe this version of Christian gnosis, but it just, I'm not buying it. Too many things here add up to the incarceration model of existence rather than the academic model of existence, where this place is supposed to be a school. Look, if we're going to be a school and you're a God, the least you can do is give us 10% of our memory, right? You don't wipe somebody's memory on the first day of school. You just don't do it. That's not how schools work. That's not how academies work, right? So this is a huge point for the soul trap, the mechanics of it, how long it's happened. Was it always been like that, intentional, or did something co-opt the system? Did something happen that made the system change into this? These are all unanswered questions, but to my thinking, after I'm 66 now, and having studied this for half my life, it's just like, to me, there's way more check marks for the incarceration, soul trap, manipulation, archon. I just did the series on Eric Dubé's Stockholm Syndrome, and very many things I agree with him about in there, except for, again, his version of Gnosticism. There are many different schools of Christian gnosis. I generally sit within the Sethian camp, but from a modern perspective, and I also, and I'm not really fond of syncretism, but I am fond of Samkhya and the ideas of the first Vedic schools about Prakriti and Purusha. So I do borrow there, to a certain degree, my own syncretic musings that make sense to me, and fuse them. There's some very decent correlations between Samkhya and Christian Gnostic thinking, the Sethian view. So, okay, I think I'll leave it at that. I got most of the points that I wanted to get across here. Late night in the van. So yeah, it's probably we're in for a rough ride here. There's certain people who have no intention of compromising on what they believe. They're all in. It's aces and eights, all the way to go to my old blog. The chief architect of OMNICORP, or the chief CEO architect of OMNICORP. That I'll link it in the description, and that's kind of where we're at today. It's on hyperdrive. This is not going away. You can listen to my song "Final Stand," four songs about God in E flat major, so E flat minor. So anyway, yeah, Andrew Martin music. We'll leave it at that, and ciao.
that